What's up guys, Steve here with Geek Boulevard, and I am back with another film review. I am going to give you my full thoughts on what I thought of Hellboy, the Crooked Man. Now, since this skipped a theatrical release outside of, some smaller theater chains, I watched the film on Prime Video, and I was very skeptical of this film upon the release of the first trailer. And since this film was made with a much lower budget compared to the two Del Toro films and the 2019 reboot, it gave off the impression that this was more along the lines of like a fan film than anything else. After watching this movie, I gotta admit, it's a good Hellboy movie. It does have its problems, and I'll address all of it, the good and the bad. So Hellboy, the Crooked Man is directed by Brian Taylor. It is rated R with a runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes. Hellboy and a rookie BPRD agent find themselves stranded in 1950s rural Appalachia. They soon discover a community of witches led by a local devil who has a connection to Hellboy's past, known around the area as the Crooked Man. Firstly, we're going to start with the good. Jack Kesey proved me wrong and makes a pretty fine Hellboy. If there's one thing that this movie had to get right, it's the title character, and I would hope so, as creator Mike Mignola co-wrote the script for this version and had a much more hands-on approach telling the story. His character, I thought, was written fairly well, and his dialogue, when delivered in all of the scenes that he was in, I just immediately thought to myself, this is how I imagine him sounding when I read the comics. He typically talks in a bit of a lower register, but he always has some smart-ass comment to add to the hairy situation that they're in typical Hellboy fashion. And there are, of course, more hints to his past and how he came to be. His origin is mentioned, and there's an inner type of battle that he's having with himself. He's a demon after all, and he hates himself for it, and people are afraid of him. And Jack Kesey did a fantastic job in showing that pain on screen. He made him much more human. Also, I kind of enjoyed the chemistry Hellboy has with his fellow BPRD agent Bobby Joe Song, played by Adeline Rudolph, who also turns in a good performance overall. She's a young agent who mostly prefers doing research rather than, being out in the field, but decides to tag along with Hellboy to transport a supernatural spider back to headquarters for further study. The spider starts to increase in size due to something kind of evil that it senses in the Appalachian woods. The spider escapes, which forces the train to derail, and Hellboy and Bobby Joe Song end up in the Crooked Man's territory. Bobby Joe is a new character created for the film, and I thought her character was handled much better compared to, say, Myers from the first Hellboy, who was also an original character. Due to the film's, shorter runtime, her relationship with Hellboy as a friend is already pretty well established at that point, so there's no wasting any time in trying to build that relationship up. She also has a bit of a tragic past as well that slowly kind of gets revealed, but still leaves some questions that could get answered in future films should they get made. I also just really liked the overall tone of creepiness that this film was, going for. It's not over the top. It's a very simple, self-contained, creepy tale with hints of larger things to come for certain characters. The music overall, composed by Sven Falconer and Guillaume Roussel, also does a really great job with solidifying that creepiness and I'm no expert when it comes to instruments, but what sounds like really unsettling violin pieces that get cut off at certain points, and I think that really elevated it for me. I also really love the overall profile of the Crooked Man himself. He is as accurate as you can possibly make him look from the miniseries he's pulled from, and I think his makeup effects, given the budget, worked in his favor very well. He's not outright shown until the later portions of the film, and he's mostly in shots that are a little out of focus to kind of give that otherworldliness to him, to that character. And his ties to Hellboy's past also made him a pretty interesting villain in my eyes. And finally, I think the practical locations worked great for a film of this size. It was all shot in Bulgaria, and the effort taken into making this film as practical as possible, I can't congratulate them enough on it. This film had the lowest budget of all the Hellboy films to date with $20 million, and I think for the most part it was smartly used in terms of the creativity and overall production. Now let's get into the bad stuff, or at least the stuff that I thought was bad. Firstly, Hellboy's makeup is not great. I do appreciate that they made him, smaller in appearance. He's not such a big hulking red demon, which makes sense as he's a younger Hellboy. This takes place in the 50s, but I think there were definitely some imperfections in his design that took me out of the movie a couple of times. Firstly, the shade of red that he is. Now, it could be because he's a younger version that maybe he's not as red right now, or perhaps he was drawn that way in the Crooked Man series. And if that's true, I'll happily retract my statement once I read the Crooked Man series, but he looked more like a guy who just had some bad sunburn or maybe a skin condition. In brightly lit scenes, he just looks pink instead of his trademark red. He looks best when he's in low lit scenes where the red seems more pronounced. I know I commended them for making him act and look more human, but I don't know, it still kind of bothered me to a degree. It could be because the way that the scenes were so brightly lit that perhaps his shade of red just looked a lot more washed out. Also, I think his makeup was like folding in on itself in those scenes quite a bit. If you're going to have Hellboy in the daytime in the woods like this, and he's in the daytime for a good majority of the film, you want the makeup to look as convincing as possible in the daylight, and it just doesn't. There were times where he would, turn his neck and you can see the makeup folding over. The same goes for the chest piece that he had on. Like, it all looked like it was just a rubber suit that was loosely applied and wasn't form-fitting enough. It just bothered me. Now, even though this film does have moments of CGI, when it is on screen, it's definitely noticeable. It may bother you, it may not. I feel like I had more issues with Hellboy's makeup than I did with the CGI, but it is still worth mentioning. Also, I think some of the ADR might have been a bit off at times. Like, the audio of the lines didn't quite match up with, their lip movements in some scenes, which was kind of weird. Maybe that was just in my experience. Since I got it on Prime Video, I don't know if there was maybe some lag in the video quality or something. I don't know for certain, but it threw me off a little bit. All in all, I'm giving Hellboy, the Crooked Man, a score of 3 out of 5 stars. A surprisingly well-told adaptation of the Crooked Man story overall, with a much more humanized Hellboy thanks to a great performance from star Jack Kesy and equally good supporting castmate Adeline Rudolph. However, Hellboy's makeup effects are not the greatest in highly lit scenes, and the film's CGI leaves much to be desired. Hopefully a sequel gets greenlit and they can increase the budget just a little bit. Now, the film was $20 on Prime Video. I know it's also on Apple TV, I think, for a little bit cheaper. So if you can get it on Apple TV, if you're a real big Hellboy fan, you want to watch this movie, we don't want to spend $20, I suggest getting it on Apple TV. I'm more of a casual that's getting into the Hellboy franchise, and I'm enjoying the ride so far. So I'm definitely excited to read the Crooked Man story after watching this adaptation of it, which I'm kind of glad that I didn't read it before watching it, so I didn't have anything to really compare it to. It just makes me more excited to read it now, so I'm very much looking forward to that. But what did you guys think of this version of Hellboy? Did you enjoy it? Where would you rank it on your list of Hellboy movies? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. It always helps me out. And if you're feeling dangerous, subscribe to the channel, tick the bell, so you can always be notified when my next review or reaction drops on the channel. I'm gonna be checking out Smile 2 in theaters this week, so I'm gonna be giving you guys my thoughts on that as well, so look forward to that. But until then, thank you for watching, guys. And until next time, keep it classy and keep it geeky.
You doubt the power of prayer, son? Just in case.